Hola a todos y bienvenidos a Business Intelligence LATAM. Mi nombre es César Oviedo y el día de hoy tenemos un evento un poquito diferente a lo que hacemos normalmente en el canal y lo que hacemos en la comunidad. Es lo que hemos llamado Tech.LATAM Talks. Realmente esto es un experimento un poco interesante. Vamos a ver cómo nos va. Desde ya los invito a que me dejen saber si ya está en vivo, que si se escucha, si no se escucha, ese tipo de cosas. Y sin nada más, vamos un poco al grano. ¿Okay? Este keynote, para empezar, no lo voy a hacer yo, lo va a hacer Ellen de parte de Texas Tech. Pero bueno, insisto, esto es una especie de bienvenida, una especie de nada más esperar a que se unan más personas y explicar un poco la logística. Y ese es el objetivo inicial. Entonces, ya muchos me conocen y si no me conocen, mi nombre es César Oviedo, soy el Community Manager de Business Intelligence LATAM, organizador del evento. Y este tipo de eventos siempre es importante darle un espacio a los sponsors. Es importante entender que este tipo de eventos se hacen en gran parte por el apoyo que nos dan los sponsors, ya sea con regalías, ya sea con simplemente de exponer un poco más el evento. Entonces, al final de cuentas, eso es parte de lo que quería comentarles. En este caso, contamos con Texas Tech University como parte de los sponsors principales, así como el CEPIC. El CEPIC, yo sé que este evento lo están viendo gente de todas partes de Latinoamérica. Entonces, el CEPIC es el Colegio de Informáticos para Costa Rica, pero bueno, yo soy yo soy tico, pues entonces ahí nos echan la mano un poquito y ya nos han ayudado anteriormente. Y por supuesto, VA-LATAM, que es el organizador. ¿Ok? Entonces, sin más por el momento, vamos un poco a la agenda y explicarles un poco la agenda. Todos ustedes debieron haber recibido un correo, que, bueno, si llegaron aquí, que les dice links aquí, o dice Tech.LATAM, links aquí, o algo así. Al final de cuentas, eso es un montón de links que pueden seguir. O sea, estos links que tengo acá son los mismos que tienen el correo, no es que los tienen que copiar, ni que cambiaron, ni nada. Simplemente es la dinámica. Ustedes pueden ver uno o ver el otro, o participan en uno o no participan en el otro. Eso es así de fácil, ¿ok? Idealmente, pues, participan en todos, pero bueno, ahí les queda. Ahora, un poco sobre la dinámica de las rifas. Hay unas rifas al final del evento. Igual hay su propio link por temas de transparencia y cierre de lo que es esto, del evento. Y nada más para comentarles un poco sobre las rifas. El Texas Tech nos está regalando un curso que realmente está súper interesante. Es importante que para participar tienen que estar suscritos al canal y comentar, porque es la única forma, como yo sé que ustedes realmente asistieron y participaron en la charla. Me explico. Si se registraron, perfecto, check. ¿Cómo sé que llegaron? Tengo que tener un comprobante de que ustedes llegaron. Entonces, con simplemente suscribirse y dejar un comentario, ya queda en cualquiera de los videos, es importante. Y obviamente, entre más comentarios, es más fácil identificarlos y más fácil que ganen el premio. Entonces, este curso, insisto, es uno de los más chivas que les encontré a ellos en su plataforma. Tiene un costo, bueno, de mercado bastante interesante. Y yo mismo quisiera que me lo hubieran dado a mí. Pero bueno, no fue el caso. De parte de VA-LATAM, vamos a igual forma, la misma mecanismo, misma historia, estar suscritos y comentar. Tenemos un Amazon gift card de $50. Igual la misma historia, comentar, aunque sea hola, ¿cómo están? Y listo, check. Ya están participando y suscritos. Y por último, el CEPIC, este es importante, una aclaración, solo aplica para Costa Rica por temas de logística, por ser hardware. El CEPIC nos está regalando principalmente dos cositas que son bien interesantes. Es un Ruco que yo no sabía qué era eso, sinceramente, yo no soy muy techie. Es tipo Chromecast o Apple TV y ese tipo de cosas. Y el otro es un dispositivo de Internet of Things, igual para los más techies de todo el mundo, ¿ok? Entonces, igual, la misma logística, suscribirse, comentar, etcétera, ¿ok? Y por último, nada más me quedo por aquí. Yo le doy paso a Ellen de parte de Texas Tech. Es sumamente importante aclarar. Ellen es de habla inglesa, entonces el primer keynote o el keynote va a ser en inglés. Sin embargo, todos los demás charlas, todas las demás pláticas, todos los demás entrenamientos van a ser en español. Ellen habla español también. Entonces, si tienen alguna pregunta, comentario, lo que sea, puede ser tanto en inglés como en español. Cero estrés con eso. Y pues nada, la verdad, muchas gracias a todos. Uy, perdón, detalle gigante. Se me olvidó el CEPIC. Perdón. El CEPIC. Eh, no sé, Paula, si queremos, más bien, Paula viene de parte del CEPIC y nada más como una breve, le doy paso a Paula antes de darle paso a Ellen y pues nada, Ellen, Paula, si quieres comentar algunas palabras.
Sí, solamente desearles que tengan un excelente día. Para el Colegio de Profesionales en Informática y Computación desde Costa Rica es valiosísimo apoyar este tipo de iniciativas, acercarnos a la comunidad. Si están interesados en que les apoyemos en otro tipo de actividades, nos pueden escribir. Tenemos una serie de charlas a lo largo de la semana en vivo para que puedan unirse. El colegio está a disposición de ustedes y es valiosísimo que nos abrieras el espacio. Que les vaya súper, que disfruten montones. Gracias a Textos Tech también por el apoyo. Y nada, de parte del colegio, un gusto y siempre aquí apoyándoles.
Bueno, excelente. Ahora sí, le doy paso a Ellen, de parte de Texas Tech. Y pues nada, por aquí vamos a estar igual en mute, cualquier cosa. E insisto, dejen sus comentarios, preguntas. Estamos para servirles. Y Ellen, todo tuyo.
Thank you very much, Cesar. Good morning to all of you who have connected to this event, something that promises to enrich us all, even though it's early on a Saturday morning. I'd like to thank Tech.LATAM for inviting me to speak this morning. And I also wanted to note that I'm broadcasting live from Texas Tech University in one of our Raider rooms, which are our normal classrooms. And this is where all of our students and where our executive education takes place. So I wanted to say hi on camera, and then I'll go off for a little while so that we can all focus on the presentation. But for now, let's delve in and get going. My name is Ellen Rose, as Cesar said, and I'm the Executive Director of Texas Tech Costa Rica. Having worked in the education sphere for over 25 years, I've witnessed firsthand how engineers, scientists, and entrepreneurs help us create the future. They design techniques and practices to experiment and explore new options to help us adapt quickly to the realities of any given situation, and often in the most challenging of climates. Right now, I think we can all agree that we certainly find ourselves in one of those challenging moments. So let's get going and explore together agile leadership and innovation beyond a crisis. One quick note. I'm sure you all will have questions, but I would like to ask you, unless it's absolutely urgent, if you can hold it to the end, then I'll go back on camera and make sure to open up the floor to answer any questions that you may have. So let's start with a question, but right at the beginning. What do General Electric, IBM, Disney, HP, Hyatt Hotels, and Microsoft all have in common? Does anyone know the answer? I know it's really early and maybe you haven't even finished your coffee yet, but for those of you who know the answer, you're already halfway there to understanding that right now we stand at an incredible moment of opportunity. For those of you who aren't quite sure what possibly might link together this range of companies across a wide variety of sectors, very soon all shall be revealed. Because from chaos and financial ruin come boundless opportunity, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. So we all have to be prepared right now to seize the moment. Crises, especially like the one we're experiencing right now, have a significant financial and human toll, stranding assets and human capital, and causing significant social and economic dislocation. I think we can all agree to that, right? This crisis has hit us on multiple levels, something that has not left anyone or any company unscathed. However, as society shifts in completely new ways, opportunities are emerging to reframe the future. Don't worry, my talk isn't meant to be a sobering lesson or a downer. at the beginning of the launch of this incredible event. Quite the opposite. It's actually to say that a great horizon lies beyond where we are right now, and it's ours to explore and claim. How can I be so sure? Well, if history proves to be any sort of reliable predictor, recessions have actually served as the launch pad for some of the world's most incredible businesses, like the companies I just mentioned a couple minutes ago. In fact, bear markets have proven to be the breeding grounds for innovation because poor economic climates such as the one we're living actually force companies and individuals to be action-driven and make tough decisions around where, how, and if they will spend. Actually, Nobel Prize winner Dr. Paul Romer once famously said, "A crisis is a terrible thing to waste." Therefore, I'd suggest that a crisis, especially like the one we're living right now, can actually provide fresh opportunities to do things that you might not have been able to do before. This is exactly how Agile leaders are approaching today's challenges. With our perfect plans now thrown out the window, we must take a step back and with fresh eyes, look for gaps in the market and adapt to approaches that may not have previously been in the cards. Some of the most successful companies sprang out of a recession and bypassed their competition. Others, like Google and Salesforce, started right before major downturns, requiring them to pivot in the midst of economic chaos, because as we all know, necessity truly is the mother of invention. To identify the correct path, we must all challenge currently held assumptions about almost everything we thought was true and try to envision where growth opportunities lie. And that is where Agile leadership and entrepreneurial zeal come into play, not just today, but every day. These moments of uncertainty can seem daunting, but they're also the ingredients for disruption from which new business models emerge and incredible innovation will spring. I'm hardly what anyone might call a Pollyanna, an excessively cheery or optimistic person. Nevertheless, I have experienced firsthand the opportunity that such change may offer. Let's take Texas Tech Costa Rica, the first US degree granting campus in the country and the institution that I've led for the past 2 years. Even before it had opened its doors to its inaugural class of 2018, there was the belief that students would just simply flock to the campus for the opportunity of earning a US degree closer to home. And while the results have been incredible, they're not exactly what we expected. The market didn't behave as our business model might have suggested. But rather than bemoaning that fact, we knew that we needed to listen to the market, do away with assumptions that didn't work, and come up with a new game plan. It was that agility that brings us to where we are today. In trying to understand our future, we engaged in a process of introspection and realized that many of the individuals who were prepared to earn a US degree and saw the value of this type of education were already planning to study abroad. Staying in Costa Rica just simply wasn't part of their plans. What did we do? We recalibrated our model, came up with new strategies, and began promoting new business lines beyond undergraduate education. Creating an executive education program by working with both CINDE and MESIT, launching technical English programs and STEM education for girls and women by partnering with MasterCard and Microsoft, we've expanded our reach and our mission. Now with the pandemic turning higher education upside down on so many levels, but especially for the international student population, Texas Tech finds ourselves uniquely positioned to appeal to those students who plan to go abroad, the very prospects who might not have been interested in studying in Costa Rica just a few months ago. The world truly has changed overnight. This realization very early on in the cycle of the global pandemic required a pivot and a change in strategy for our marketing and recruitment teams. Suddenly, there was a new opportunity, one that was ours to develop and mold in a climate of total uncertainty. We refocused, changed gears, and went to work immediately. As the leader, our success was not based on me, or on any one member of the team, but on sharing a common vision for the future and on mapping strategy for something entirely different. We as a startup understood what was at stake and decided that this was the perfect climate for us to show our agility and test our entrepreneurial mettle. However, the trick was not just to think about what would solve or address the issue of the day, but what might have staying power for our institution. And that's the greatest challenge for all of us as leaders today and beyond this very moment. In times of uncertainty, it's hard to know what will stick or will be around for the long haul. In fact, too many of us, even the most able leaders, are caught responding to the crisis du jour and not coming up with ideas, solutions, and innovations that will outlast the pandemic. That's our collective challenge, whether you have decades of experience, are launching a startup, or have just begun your first job. In this context, there's a great emphasis on the importance of being agile. This term, borrowed from the software world's concept of agile development, is a management style that requires a leader to be flexible, adaptable, and fast in their decision making. However, there is a fine line between stasis and chaos. While moving quickly is necessary, there has to be intentionality in the decisions that we make. That intentionality can paralyze some leaders. So the trick is finding the balance between moving quickly and aggressively and waiting too long. So, what makes an agile leader? And how can we implement these qualities? Forbes asked its council of coaches what it meant to be an agile leader. And here are some of the qualities that were described that actually resonated with me. First, you have to foster innovation throughout your team. Agile is both a way of working and a way of being. To foster an agile culture in an organization, it's not enough to establish best practices and develop a rhythm of project planning that the team can follow. Each of us must inspire creativity and innovation within our teams so that as the organization propels forward, each of its members can directly contribute. The more ownership the team has, the greater both the input and the output can become. Also, this maybe is the most important thing. We have to work at lightning speed. Nimbleness or agility means being able to move quickly and easily. Speed is essential to success, not just right now, but always. Those who move faster to solve problems, create a product, or respond to a need in the market will be those who win, whether it's the small entrepreneur or the giant multinational. Agility is often more attainable when actions are driven by a shared goal. When everyone knows what they're working toward, they become more creative in accomplishing this collective vision. We have a saying at Texas Tech Costa Rica amongst the staff and faculty: everyone is a recruiter. Whether you work in facilities, accounting, or the library, or you're teaching first-year chemistry, we are all here to recruit the next class of Texas Tech Costa Rica students and help them succeed, not just academically, but personally and professionally. It's that shared vision that's created a north for our team and something that we can all rally around. The next part, and this is what I struggle with the most, we have to get comfortable making mistakes. It's funny, I say the same thing to my 6-year-old, whether he's learning to ride his bike or practicing cursive. And truthfully, it's my issue, not his. He's not afraid to make a mistake. It's adults who have fear of failure. We do. Every day brings new challenges, and as leaders, we can't always rely on what worked yesterday to solve tomorrow's problems. Leaders should always use their experience as a tool, but we can't rely on it slowly to overcome issues. We're in uncharted waters right now, so learning to be daring and unafraid to make mistakes is paramount to success. And that's something that I'm going to have to take a note on myself. The next is that we have to work hard to promote resilience and creativity amongst ourselves and our teams. Agility is a sign that someone's flexible, open to change and to growth. We need to be adaptable and flexible in our approach to maintaining competitiveness. Agile leaders don't get stuck in what change means to them and their egos. Instead, they take pride in being resilient and creative in their approaches. More importantly, they know that the answer lies in their teams, not in themselves. In mid-March, when the pandemic truly reared its ugly head in Costa Rica, knowing that we had to migrate to online classes in the matter of 48 hours, our team, even without requisite experience, mounted a plan and implemented it right away. As the leader of this project, I had to set aside the fact that I wished, like anything, that we could just continue in-person classes. I was a little bit in denial, I have to say. Instead, having IT, student services, marketing, and academic advising take the lead, we successfully transitioned to synchronous online learning in record time and managed to keep student satisfaction just as high as ever. That's the true sign of a creative and resilient team. We also have to continuously learn and embody a growth mindset, not just as leaders, but we have to promote that for our team. Agile leaders are those who can adapt to an ever-changing and uncertain environment. When you set out to be a continuous leader and have a growth mindset, you're always looking for ways to improve your product, your services, and yourself as a manager and a leader. Learning from every opportunity prepares you to handle whatever happens and makes you a better role model for others. I'd love to hear what some of you have set out to learn over the past 3.5 months during the pandemic. Feel free to send me a note on the chat and we can talk about it at the end of the presentation. Our team actually launched an internal challenge and inspired everyone to choose something new to learn. Whether it was improving their parallel parking skills, and that was really someone's goal, honing their English speaking abilities, learning Python, or baking sourdough bread, we all rose to the challenge and embraced the notion of becoming continuous learners. Next, and this is another one that I struggle with too, we all have to let go of things that don't work. Einstein once famously said, insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting different results. How many times have we all tried the same thing only to realize that we've wasted valuable energy and resources? Being agile means being willing to quickly let go of what's not working and trying something else. Once accepted, beliefs can become realities that are hard to alter. Agile leaders constantly challenge their beliefs and assumptions so that they can meet the needs of the moment versus clinging to a cause that's perhaps already lost. At Texas Tech, we were certain that high school students would love to take an English language university preparedness class. We kept marketing over and over again to the target, only to find that high schoolers weren't at all the ones who were interested and had no desire to take advantage of a course in this area. Actually, it was professionals who wanted that. Finally, realizing that our assumptions had been wrong, we revamped the course and launched it for a group of professionals without a single high schooler. Now we're in the process of actually developing technical English courses for professionals in specific sectors, such as finance and technology, and realize there's a great need in this area that Texas Tech Costa Rica can fulfill. Maybe one of you will actually join us in one of these courses. Also, really important, you have to shift your management style to match your team. There are many ways in business to be agile, but one of the most powerful ways is demonstrating agility with your collaborators. People like to be communicated with and recognized differently. It should never be a one-size-fits-all proposition. You have to show that you value your team's contributions by understanding them and being the leader that they actually need. Having managed a variety of teams in the United States, Mozambique, Costa Rica, and Cabo Verde, and by the way, Mozambique and Cabo Verde are in Africa, just to remind everyone, I've come to see that it's the personal relationships that bring the most satisfaction and can yield the most fruitful personal and professional relationships for us and team members. Working closely with your team breaks down barriers and allows creativity to flow. So how can we catalyze this and begin to look beyond where we are today? Also, what are some of the trends that we're already seeing? In response to the pandemic, innovators and leaders have jumped in to help. We've all seen that around the world, distilleries have shifted production from liquor to hand sanitizers overnight. And in Costa Rica, that was no different. Final quickly changed course to produce alcohol and gel, partnering with Correos de Costa Rica to offer rapid and safe delivery of a product that's crucial to our health and safety. The British company Dyson created a new ventilator for the UK's National Health Service in a matter of 10 days. And even on our home campus in the United States, Texas Tech's engineering project labs quickly became centers of innovation, working to create low-cost, life-saving equipment in record time. Those are great examples of agility, but let's also draw upon another moment in history before we turn to further local examples. In 2002, the SARS epidemic that ravaged Asia and led its citizens to shelter in place was actually the impetus for growth and widespread adoption of e-commerce in the region, making China the hub of innovation around a new way of acquiring goods and services. Now, right here in Costa Rica, the conglomerate of stores known as AR Holdings that operates The Gap, Old Navy, Banana Republic, Mango and Crate and Barrel, among others, did the very same thing. Unable to open its stores to the public for weeks and weeks on end, and with merchandise ordered seasons ahead, the leaders at AR had but one choice: launch an e-commerce platform or risk sales continuing to plummet. Even though they knew the local market wasn't used to shopping online, AR was convinced that they needed to test the viability of e-commerce in Costa Rica. Guess what? They found that overnight, orders from the online platform lineup exploded, and suddenly they had forever changed the way the local consumer shopped. In just a few weeks, online shopping in Costa Rica was accessible to a wide range of consumers who otherwise would never have had this type of experience, or it might have taken a long time for them to be able to have access to it. As I hear about these latest feats that are taking place in an incredibly bear market, I can't help but wonder why it took a pandemic for so many of ourselves, myself included, to allow our nimbleness to shine through. But rather than keep asking that question over and over again, which I do often, I think it's important to focus on the fact that prioritizing innovation today will be the key to unlocking growth and incredible opportunity post-crisis. In this context, we must ask, how should companies that believe in the innovation imperative pivot to pursue it today? Right now, in the midst of chaos. My quick answer is, you better jump right off that deep end. Because unless we're truly ready to do so, we might not develop a robust enough approach to recovering from the crisis and significantly increasing the value captured from innovation-led growth fueled by these unique circumstances. In a recent survey conducted by McKinsey & Company of more than 200 organizations across industries, more than 90% of the executives said they expect the fallout from COVID-19 to fundamentally change the way they do business over the next 5 years. Who am I to challenge McKinsey? But I would actually say that the pandemic and the financial challenges that have come along with it will actually change the way business is done forever. We'll never go back in time. That's my opinion. Take the idea of the remote office or working from home. It was unthinkable that entire organizations would migrate overnight to working from home, but they did it, and they did it convincingly and successfully. And now you even have major organizations like Twitter and Facebook saying that they may very well maintain work from home for large parts of their organizations indefinitely, something that was unthinkable 4 months ago. More than 3/4 of the same organizational leaders that McKinsey surveyed also agreed that the crisis will create boundless opportunities for growth, although these answers amongst executives vary greatly across industry. When we look back on the current crisis, there's no doubt that we'll learn that it resulted in a number of innovations, like new drugs and medical devices, improved healthcare processes, manufacturing and supply chain breakthroughs, novel collaboration techniques. In your companies or in your lives, what innovations have you brought forward? Have you seen anything remarkable yet? If not, I would say that it's just a matter of time before you do see something incredible or you're part of an amazing change or innovation. Of course, seeing the opportunities emerging from the crisis isn't the same as being able to drive them forward. Fewer than 30% of these same executives told McKinsey that they do feel confident that they're prepared to address the changes that they see coming. That means 70% don't feel as prepared. The area in which they feel the most challenged is delivering new opportunities. So the question might be, how can we prepare ourselves to seize these chances and opportunities by becoming more agile and more forward-looking leaders? Leaders face an important choice around supporting innovation-led growth in the short term, one that may have lasting consequences for companies and their ability to grow in the years to come. Finally, research from McKinsey also suggests that playing it safe may be a short-sighted decision right now. So how can we really prepare to jump off the deep end? Well, Larry Clark, the managing director of Global Learning Solutions at Harvard Business Review, offers some great advice for those of us striving to become more agile leaders. He suggests that we problem solve at the heart. What these innovations have all in common is that they will solve problems, which is always at the heart of innovation. And they'll also be driven by the intense need and human desire to help, to connect with others, and to be part of the solution when things get tough. And right now, things are pretty darn tough. But there's much more to the generative nature of a crisis that leads to innovation than simply an opportunity to solve problems. For leaders like you and me, these conditions provide us with the opportunity to do our best to help, and for our teams to do their most innovative work in the service of our organizations, our countries, and perhaps even the globe. What is there about crises that actually breeds so much innovation? There are key shifts that occur during a crisis that foster the conditions for new thinking and doing. Understanding these can help us seize the opportunity to drive useful change. We also have to learn to unite around the purpose. One of the key leadership challenges in day-to-day organizational life is inspiring engagement and generating energy toward the goals of the organization. During a crisis, there can be a huge increase in your team's energy and creativity. Leaders who can appropriately catalyze that energy toward a clear purpose will often experience a wave of new ideas as individuals suddenly feel empowered to share ideas and bring forward projects that they normally might have kept to themselves. Clark goes on to use a really apt example. Take the Apollo 13 mission to the moon that was upended by an explosion on board, which forced NASA engineers to improvise to save the crew. Under the famous leadership dictate, failure is not an option, the engineering team successfully rallied to design a makeshift device using only items available to the crew on board the lunar module so that the astronauts could survive the trip home. And we all know they did. Some say that courage is defined as when purpose overcomes fear. In this way, crisis can create the organizational courage to take actions that might have been unthinkable in normal times. Seeing the system differently. Leaders often require a fresh perspective on their organizations to find opportunities to innovate. A crisis can have much the same effect, putting the spotlight on vulnerabilities, problem areas great and small, that we've been ignoring or just plain unaware of. When a crisis hits, we're forced to confront the brutal truth about how our systems work or actually don't. The places where things could be better done or more efficiently. All of a sudden, opportunities for innovation or change are staring us in the face, but it requires agile leadership to be able to act upon this with speed and determination. That means unfreezing the organization. As organizations grow, To become more efficient, they tighten their structures to create predictability and stability. But crises change all of that. For example, the pandemic has upended the way the grocery chain manage inventory, a process that's been refined over decades to maximize profitability by carrying smaller inventories and turning that inventory more quickly so things remain fresh. Another great example from Clark brings this point into sharp relief. With a huge spike in demand for products, purchasing managers have bypassed these finely tuned processes in favor of shortcuts that source larger quantities of product much more quickly. The bureaucratic overhead of review and approval for dramatic change vanished overnight, allowing for fresh thinking to be applied quickly to address this new challenge. It's that new way of thinking that we're all seeking right now. And that means we have to inspire action for ourselves and our organizations. Crisis demands movement and change, just like we saw in the example of the grocery store or an Apollo 11 or some of the things I talked about with Texas Tech or AR Holdings or FNAU. The pace of everything from brainstorming to decision making and implementation have all increased dramatically. Organizations must force themselves to quickly test ideas, evaluate results, and oftentimes go back to the drawing board. It's this process that allows the space to test different thinking, to fail fast, to learn, and then to move forward. In short, to yield innovation. For us at Texas Tech Costa Rica, that meant coming to terms with the fact that our prospective students and families wouldn't be able to come on tours to visit our campus, nor would our recruiters be able to present the university during high school visits and live college fairs. We needed a quick solution, so we began hosting and participating in virtual college fairs and curated a virtual campus tour of our facilities. With no time to spare, we figured out alternatives to our tried and true approaches, throwing the usual playbook right out the window. Well, we're all learning on the fly to respond to the crisis in real time. They're quick hit lessons, guidelines, and tips that can help us make the most of the opportunities for innovation that the current crisis presents. We as Agile teams are seeing a window of opportunity to experiment things that we have never been able to experiment before. There's no certainty about when the pandemic will end and what it will leave in its wake. We also don't know what the impact will truly be. But if we use it wisely as an opportunity for innovating, for learning, and becoming better leaders and individuals, we can be sure that once this is over, we will have done our best to be change makers. This approach is more important than ever. As EY points out, by understanding the forces shifting in the world's tectonic plates, leaders can take an approach that works back from a vision of the future to create scenarios for growth beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, using them to set an action agenda for today, tomorrow, and well into the future. We will thrive in the post-pandemic world by focusing on people, using technology to our advantage, innovating where we can, and becoming more comfortable with failure. Focusing more on people will allow us to connect better with our teams and create products and services that more fully meet customer needs. Embracing rapid change is critical in an environment that we are all reinventing right now, whether it's educational institutions, workplaces, or the field of healthcare. Everything's on the move and everything's changing. More importantly, by adopting fearless growth and the mindset that goes along with it to simultaneously plan for a future that we have yet to even imagine, while delivering today, the more adept we will become at pivoting on the fly and innovating as Agile leaders who see beyond the horizon. Thank you so much. And now I'm happy to take questions for anyone in the audience who might like to discuss this a bit more.
Hola, hola a todos. Tenemos un par de preguntas. Tenemos muchos comentarios, muchísimos. Este, Principalmente relacionados a, bueno, agradecimientos del evento, que genial iniciativa, ese tipo de cosas. Solo por aquello. No todos los comentarios los pongo porque son muchísimos. Así que no se estresen si no ven su comentario por ahí. En realidad veo solo un par, insisto. Pero por acá, Stanley Vegan. Vamos a ver. Tenemos una pregunta por acá. Ellen, no sé si tienes algo que comentar.
Perdón.
Dice, puedes ver
How,
el... Yes, correct.
sure. How do you develop the management required to be a leader? Okay, Stanley, that's a good question. I would say that developing the management skills is something that's done over time. Unfortunately, it's nothing that we can do overnight, but it's working toward those qualities on a day-to-day basis and drawing from your team and from the lessons of failure and success. That's when you know that you're learning to be a good manager and that you're able to handle things. You're in a constant state of having to readjust how you work on things and dig a little bit deeper to figure out what you need to do. It's a constant source of having to do what you think is right, look in the mirror, and then having to readjust. That's my best advice on that. Any other questions?
Acá tenemos otra.
Okay. Okay. This is from Mario. For Texas Tech, will we start offering graduate programs, not just undergraduate programs? Right now, we are offering executive education programs, and actually, perhaps we can make that information available to everybody who has joined us today so that we can start showing you some of the continuing education programs that we're currently offering and will offer over the next year. We do have plans in the future, hopefully, to be able to offer masters in both business and engineering fields, but I don't have a defined date right now. But I would tell you, it won't be too far in the future. Thanks for that question, Mario. What do you think, Cesar? Are there more questions, or do I pass? Oh, there's one more. Okay. Somebody else is asking again the same question about the graduate degrees. So it's the same thing. We will offer graduate degrees, but I don't have a defined date right now. We are starting to talk to the schools of engineering and the schools of business on the main campus, and those are the areas that we will, at some point in the future, be able to offer those. We have another question too. How do you handle the message of having a growth mindset with people who are, maybe this is trying to say challenging or adverse? It's hard. And also, when companies right now, people are really scared about their jobs. They're scared about the future of the company. And so projecting a positive growth mindset, for leaders, it's really tough on a daily basis. And this is where those personal relationships come in. If there is somebody who is not quite on board with it, that individual will need a lot of mentoring and a lot of extra work, because most likely where that adversity is coming from, or where that challenge is coming from, maybe from a place of fear. And it's possible that person may have the best ideas out there. I'm not sure if I really answered the question that you're posing. If not, then feel free to send it again. and I'll try to answer it in a deeper way for you if I didn't quite get it.
Tenemos una más por acá.
Okay, I have Javier asking, what's the most common problem found at the beginning of teams when they're shifting to an agile methodology, and how do you overcome it? It's speed, because you're asking people to break protocol. And there are a lot of people on teams who really like to follow rules, and they feel more comfortable being organized and knowing what comes next. So that's what I've seen is perhaps the biggest challenge, the rapidity of the response that we're asking. And how do you overcome it? I think through building success. So if you can demonstrate small wins to individuals and the organization, people have confidence that the breakneck speed that agile leadership requires is actually something that they can all keep up with. But sometimes you have to pull people along a little bit and get them to understand that we will make mistakes on this and we will fail, but that's okay, because from the failure, and oftentimes associated with doing things so quickly, that the successes will come and the lessons will come. I hope that that answered your question, Javier.
Tenemos una más por acá.
Okay, great. Keep them coming. Okay, Giovanni, how can you evolve a public organization focus on control to one focus on exploration, experiments that can fail, in which turn can prove public funds will not have return? So basically, let me try to paraphrase it, Giovanni. So this is for public sector, not for private sector, where you're using public funds and there'll be no return. Just like in private industry, there are times when the public sector too is going to have to invest funds, and the rate of return is not going to necessarily be what you want, or it's going to be a long-term proposition. And that's something that we all have to know, because a lot of times right now, we can't play it safe. Just as some of the information I gave from McKinsey, if we play it safe and we are only investing in things, including public funds, that we know will only bring a definite return, we're probably all going to miss the boat. So that's going to be one of those things to convince your teams and your leaders that the investment is worth it. Even if you're not 100% sure, it's worth trying things, even if there is potential failure. And I understand when it's public funds, it's very, very different. But I can assure you that with private funds too, you have shareholders and board members that hold you to task, just like the government and the people hold you to task for spending money as well. So it's not that different a scenario at the end of the day. But again, it's about jumping off the deep end.
Tenemos una más de parte de José Pereira.
Okay, Jose, how do you see the idea to your managers that failure is needed to innovate and do not die trying? Yeah, it's hard, because for me as well, by the way, someone just told me I'm not on camera, so I'm not sure, Cesar, if I am or if I'm not, but so if you want to put me on, that's fine. I'm the type of manager who I always say, look, I know we may fail, and I fail all the time. And so I think you as a manager have to be willing to say to your team, we're going to try this, and we may very well not succeed. But when we don't succeed, we learn things that will serve other purposes going forward. And if you're the person who's pitching to a manager that something may fail and you're not sure, use parts of this presentation and tell them that this is the time that they have to really try to do things that they might not ordinarily do, because opportunity is out there. And sometimes you have to throw a bunch of ideas against a wall until one sticks, and we don't know the one that's going to stick. But it's worth it right now to try to be bold and innovative and sell that to your team or to your manager. Okay, we have another question right now. What is your recommendation to handle a personal relationship at remote work, through remote work? That is something that I have struggled with. And our team right now is coming in shifts. And I know that not all companies are doing that right now. Some are still 100% remote work. And I've heard reports from some companies that the relationships are better right now, that people are getting along and they're more productive and they enjoy, you know, when they have an office meeting or something like that on Zoom even more. For me personally, I can't say that that's my case. I think that that personal contact is so necessary. So teams that are starting to go back, you know, if you can have, you know, great socially distanced interactions, that energy that you get from each other is really important. If you can't, then what we've been doing, and this is what we were doing during the height of all this, well, it's actually the height of it now, but when we were more, when pretty much everyone was working at home, we would have staff meetings twice a week. And a lot of times I would go on camera, and when we have small meetings, it's nice for people to go on camera to sort of reconnect. It's not the same thing as being in the same room, but that's the other thing. When we do take ourselves on camera and we can connect a little bit more, I think that it is helpful for us to sort of reignite what it looks like to look each other in the eyes, even if it's through a screen. It's not ideal, but I think it's the best we can do right now under these very difficult of circumstances right now.
Yo creo que ya estaríamos por acá. De verdad, ya estamos un poquito a punto de empezar con la próxima sesión. De verdad, Ellen, muchísimas gracias. Les comparto todos el chat. Bueno, insisto, tienen en la invitación del evento, tienen los siguientes links para las siguientes charlas. De verdad, muchas gracias a todos que participaron. Muchas gracias, Ellen. Y muchas gracias nuevamente a los patrocinadores, a Texas Tech, al Speak. Y pues nada, de verdad, muchas gracias, Ellen. De verdad, muy provechoso. Y pues nada, nos quedamos por acá. Chaito, Ellen, muchas gracias nuevamente.
See you a todos. Ciao. Have a good day, everybody. Enjoy your Saturday at this incredible event.
Thank you.